Modernday-Thomist, where we parse classical wisdom to cultivate intellectual virtue today. I'm your host, MDT, the Modern-Day-Thomist. Sorry friends, but this one's going to be a little long. We have to establish a bit of foundation before just jumping in. In the future, I'll try to get straight to the point. Also, I'm not very familiar with the YouTube interface yet, but I'll try to timestamp where we actually get into the Summa in case you want to just jump straight there. This is the first episode of our Journey series, where we will explore the Summa step by step with 3 objectives. First, to get a basic understanding of the arguments for and against each point as presented by St. Thomas. Second, to highlight and explore both the metaphysical principles and the real definitions of terms underlying each argument. Thirdly, to link these definitions and principles to other important theses, cross-referencing the Summa itself in addition to other classical works, as well as modern form arguments that we may encounter from others. But wait, MDT, you might ask, why are we even journeying through the Summa to begin with? What the heck did some guy living in the 12th century know that could possibly apply to living a better life and becoming a better person today? I'll bet he never even had a flip phone, let alone the entire internet at his disposal. So, could he possibly have anything to say that's worth listening to? Well, while you would be correct as to his circumstances, if you're here, I'll bet you experience the same problem that I do every day. I want to like people, and I want to be a good neighbor and friend and brother, but people drive me crazy. The average person is not particularly conversant in logic, the science of thinking, and half of everyone you meet on any given day is below average. While that can be taxing, it is not without remedy. Enter Aquinas. Aquinas was a paragon of logic and common sense. You will see many modern talking points, both theological and political, redound throughout his writing because the same arguments have always been used against the truth in one form or another, and the same arguments have always been used in service of the truth in one form or another. By becoming familiar with the Summa Theologiae, my hope is that we will all be drawn closer in relationship with God, but furthermore, that we'll be better equipped to serve our fellows as neighbor, friend, and brother, both in our words and in the example that we give. We will start at the beginning with the first part, question 1, article 1, which reads, whether besides philosophy any further doctrine is required. I will paraphrase and gloss the original here, but I encourage you to follow along with the complete text, a free online copy of which, translated by Dominicans in 1920, is available at the link below. As an aside, my own hardbound edition is a Dominican translation with the original Latin beside it, and I have noted a few variances both between this English and the online English, as well as between this English and the original Latin text. As I only dabble in Latin, I will try to point out discrepancies which I notice and give you my opinion, but I will leave it to you to come to your own conclusions about such variants. One such common discrepancy between the English and the Latin concerns the use of being to describe the 3 distinct terms esse, essens, and ens. Briefly put, esse is the irregular verb to be, or referring to the categorical being, as in ontology is the science in which we study being itself. Essens is the present participle of esse, and also means being, but refers to the mode in which a thing is being. A good way to remember this is just to read it as a cognate of our English essence. Ens, or entis, is the noun being, as in this being right here, that being over there, or even human being. It is a thing that is engaged in the act of being. Once again, I will try to draw your attention to these details as they come up in the text. Before we get into the first objection, a brief recap concerning the format is in order. Each topical entry is presented as a broad area of question, in this case, concerning the nature of sacred doctrine. Under that title, the issue is broken up into smaller yes-no questions, in this case 10, whether it is necessary, whether it is a science, whether sacred doctrine is one or many, whether it is speculative or practical, etc. In this manner, the complex issue of sacred doctrine is revealed to be black and white, not grayscale or subject to debate, because each individual point of inquiry is a simple yes or no, with no space for any in-between or vagueness. This is of the utmost importance as it cuts straight to the heart of one of the world's biggest logical problems today, which is that people obfuscate the knowing of truth with the application of truth, and claim that since there is room for uncertainty in the application of principle, there must be room for uncertainty in the knowing of principle. There is not. The truth is truth, and it is unified, as we shall see St. Thomas pointing out time and time again. But back to the format of each point of inquiry. Firstly, the objections are presented, arguments that were propagated historically as well as contemporaneously for Aquinas at the University of Paris, and which were in many cases very persuasive, so persuasive in fact that many of the erroneous modern arguments you will have heard are mirrored in the text, sometimes exactly. After presenting the most persuasive arguments, steel-manning his opponent's view, St. Thomas then claims Sed Contra, or but on the contrary, and gives his own answer to the question, bolstered at times by notable Christians or even by exemplary pagan teachers. He follows that up with specific rebuttals to the objecting arguments when that is needed, so that you and I can get a quick lesson in applied apologetics. The prologue reads, "We purpose in this book to treat of whatever belongs to the Christian religion, in such a way as may tend to the instruction of beginners. That's why we're here, to become better. Let's make it happen." To that purpose, we will have to understand and apply a variety of principles, as well as an expansive vocabulary. Before delving into the particulars of any inquiry, we will review necessary definitions so that we can really make St. Thomas's teaching our own, because at the end of the day, the only philosophy that you and I have is that which we have taken to ourselves and understand. It would be nice if you could explain it to anyone who asks you about it too, so that's the goal that we will work toward throughout this series. One final note before moving on to the text. You may not need this. Everyone is at a different level of understanding and competency, and this series is aimed at the neophyte. I hope to gloss the text in such a manner that I can add value for some more advanced students at times, but that remains to be seen. I would certainly appreciate it if you would take the time to hear me out on every article of every question, but let's face it, that's a lot of material. I encourage you, therefore, to first search for the materials that would be the most helpful for you individually, and secondly, to ask the specific questions which answers will most help you along. If you're trying to understand Objection 2 of Question 29 of the third part, you'll be waiting quite some time for me to get there if I just go in order. So please ask when you need something. I will answer to the best of my ability, and if that's not going to be good enough, I will get my mentor to assist. I can answer in the form of an episode, for any questions that are best handled as a group lesson, otherwise in private correspondence. But now, let us embark upon the Summa Theologiae. Prima pars, Question 1, Article 1, whether besides philosophy any further doctrine is required. A few vocabulary words to cover. Philosophy. Is it a true science? Yes. Well, a collection of sciences, you might argue. Teleology, ontology, deontology, epistemology. I will refer to the collection in the singular at times and in the plural at other times, and I hope you don't find that confusing. Aquinas sets out the boundaries of philosophy in very haphazard fashion throughout, probably because it was common knowledge at the time. One didn't come to the table to have a philosophy discussion without realizing that it was truly a science. We will see within the first couple of questions in the Summa that he roughly defines philosophy as the science by which we acquire, categorize, and expound certain knowledge through ultimate causes. Its principles are self-evident as they proceed from the natural light of the human intellect. It precedes and is presupposed by all of the natural sciences, and it treats upon everything that falls under the purview of the natural sciences, indeed, everything that is not above reason. Therefore, the natural sciences can neither reject nor operate outside of the bounds of the philosophical sciences. Which brings us to the next term, science. What is science? Science, Latin scientia, as an endeavor may be adequately summed up as certain knowledge through causes. This knowledge is acquired through principles that are either in themselves self-evident or reducible to the conclusions of a higher science. Science, sciens, as a collection of data, was essentially summed up by Aristotle as roughly knowing a thing is true, knowing why it is true, and knowing why it cannot be untrue. If you have that degree of certitude, you came prepared. Also, a handful of principles for you. Some of the core metaphysical and moral principles to be on the lookout for in this episode are the necessity of due proportionality in things generally, which is implicitly recognized in the fact that the universe is intelligible and we can have a conversation about it. The universe didn't have to be intelligible to us, a fact which even celebrated atheists recognize, such as Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he tweeted out on April 3, 2021, "The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you." Yet I would argue somehow it does make sense. More about that in another episode, though. Secondly, the necessity of justice. Justice is the virtue by which one renders to others what is their due, both individually and corporately. This harks back to due proportionality in the end, but notice how St. Thomas takes great pains to point out that it would be absurd for God to expect humans to know certain truths about him if he did not broadly reveal them. Thirdly, the requirement the revelation be consonant with reason, or put differently, truth is a unity. A thing cannot both be true and be not true in the same sense at the same time. This is the principle of non-contradiction, which is the prime metaphysical principle. If someone tries to tell you that, well, this thing is true from a religious perspective, but it's untrue from a scientific perspective, or vice versa, you're listening to the wrong people. That sums it up for the principles. Let me know in the comments if you spot any others that I missed. Objection 1, and again, I encourage you to read the original text at the link provided. My paraphrasis and analysis. We don't need any knowledge beyond philosophy because philosophy covers all things rational, and anything beyond the rational is superfluous. I think you are more likely to hear the argument, who needs philosophy even, which we can treat upon. But even assuming your counterpart understands the need for philosophy, you'll likely hear this question too. Why do I need anything beyond the physical sciences and philosophy? I don't need faith in some all-seeing sky daddy, and I certainly don't need the shackles of your religion in order to live a good life. Objection 2. Philosophy already covers all rational truths, even pertaining to God himself. So how can we possibly need any additional knowledge? Which is an excellent question. Sed Contra. Sacred doctrine, that is, scripture inspired of God, is not built upon reason, as philosophy has been. It relies solely on faith in the Word of God, as God has revealed it, God who can neither deceive nor be deceived. Even though many things can be known about the first cause from an analysis of its effects, we can't see all the effects, so our scope of knowledge is quite limited, according to the natural light of human intellect. While we can naturally know that God is necessary, which we will explore later in Question 2, Article 3, among other places, and we know that he has many necessary attributes, he has more beyond what we might discern if we were left unaided. The first 4 questions of the first part deal with God's necessary attributes, but he wanted to be known by us to a greater degree and to be loved commensurately, to the extent that we can understand and love him. So he revealed much more about himself than ever we could figure out on our own. But truth being a unity, and God being incapable of deceiving or being deceived, these truths about God will never be at odds with the truths promulgated by any other true science. I believe the specifics of the text from this point on are readily evident, so I won't belabor them. That brings us to the end. Let me know in the comments section if you have any questions or additional arguments for or against anything presented here. If you enjoyed this episode or even enjoyed hate watching it, please hit the like button and subscribe if you support our mission of cultivating intellectual virtue. Click the notification bell so that you can stay up to date with additional content as we publish it. Also, I've been writing essays since I was 5 years old because I enjoy it, but both I and my producer are brand new to publishing and broadcasting. I want to get my feet under me before I jump out and do anything weird like live episodes. It's going to take a little while. Please give me a chance to get up to speed on all of the editing and all of the other concerns for this. I hope that this podcast is able to be much more in the future, but it's going to have very humble beginnings. I hope that you all have a great day, my friends, and remember, all it takes to change the world is one mind, one heart at a time. It's up to you and me to live and speak in such a manner that others want to hear what we have to say. I will see you in the next one. All the pictures and movies that you see throughout this video are my property. I took them. I've been hiking in a lot of really beautiful places with a lot of really cool people. If you would like to hear any of the stories, if you would like to use any of the pictures, please get in touch with me for the originals, and you'll have my blessing moving forward. Please don't just hijack them yourself. Thank you.